Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Reza. Reza is an incredible illusionist and magician who's doing his show in Branson, Missouri. I have to say, this was one of the best illusion shows I have ever seen in my entire life. So I knew that I had to interview him and learn a little bit about how he does it and how you can do it if you're into producing your own show, making giant illusion shows, or anything in between. Reza is incredibly creative and was a blast to speak with, and you're going to learn as much as I did. Please enjoy a lovely episode with Reza. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with Reza. Reza, how you doing?
I'm good, Jonah. How are you?
I am doing awesome, and I gotta tell you that I believe that I saw the best illusion show of my life with you at your theater. When I started this podcast, I was like, this would be great because I can go see a magic show of like magicians that I know, and then I can review it. And then I saw a magic show with my peers in it that I didn't like, and I was like, you know what? I don't review magic shows anymore. I don't do that anymore. So I never sort of reviewed magic shows. And honestly, I saw a show, I just was totally mind blown, and I thought it'd be a lovely thing to talk about. So let's start before the show. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get into magic?
I got into it, I think like everybody else did, a combination of TV shows that were popular at the time and a couple gifts as like magic kits for birthday and Christmas. And my parents were like, hey, this is something he likes. And so let's get him a couple more of these things and see what develops. And so that's what took place.
What were the magic TV shows at your time?
So like World's Greatest Magic, my grandma would like record them. So she would have like, wanted to come hang out. She'd have all these videos of like magic shows because she knew that I liked it and it was something that we could bond over. And then there's a couple magicians that were on that I had the opportunity to see live, and they were so kind. So one was a magician named Dave Hamner, and he'd just been on like World's Greatest Magic 5 at the time. So big NBC special for those that haven't seen that or didn't grow up at that time. It was like prime time. Like people watched it and then everyone talked about it later. Like those TV shows don't exist now, but at the time, you know, it was very much pop culture. So then to get to meet one of these performers was a big deal. But I also wrote a little letter backstage. Hey, I would love to meet you if there's a chance to come back. He was so.
You wrote a physical letter.
A physical letter, hand to the box office person. Yeah, like just shoot my shot.
How did you know where to mail it?
No, I handed it to the box office. Like as I walked in.
I understand.
Yeah. And there was two performers that did this for me. One was Kirby Van Birch, and then the other was Dave Hamner. So Kirby did meet and greets publicly. And so I just waited in line and got to meet him. But Dave, I don't think at the time did, but what he offered is like, why don't you come backstage and take a look at things? And he gave me the chance to see behind the scenes of the show, which was incredible. And it was eye-opening to me. It made me want to do it more. And then Kirby, same thing. You know, I waited to the very end of the line to maybe have a couple more moments with him. And he was gracious as well, brought me backstage. So now seeing like how these shows operate and all these big props, costumes, dressing rooms, like what's actually taking place to produce this show, that intrigued me even more. And I think that's when I started saying, this is something that I want to take pretty seriously.
And at the time, were you doing any magic or just a fan of magic?
I was a fan, but I did like school talent show, like that level. I would go to a magic shop and whenever I could afford it, buy one of the big props off the shelf. And so I was getting there, but I hadn't created a business model with it at that point.
I think something that's really interesting to me is that your show was mostly like a grand illusion show. And even the way that you're talking about it now, it's like I got to see these big illusions and buy these big props. And like, I never bought a big magic prop in my entire life. What was the draw to grand illusions or big props? Did you have a period where you weren't using big props and giant metamorphoses and things, or you just went right to grand illusions?
I think I like the big stuff. I don't know what drew me to it originally, but someone gave me this like word of advice that stuck with me. And it was that all that stuff is just furniture. That's what they called it. And it's what you do with it. It's how you weave the story and your persona. And are you funny? Are you serious? It's what you create around this, quote unquote furniture. And that was really great advice, because at the time there was, a number of tricks, like, whatever they like, obviously sub trunk, metamorphs, like that's the first trick you get into. And then there's like 12 different box tricks that anybody can buy, and you see them in every cruise ship magic show. And it's just like, there's different music, maybe a little different choreography, but it's the same exact trick. So it's reinventing that. And so the way I started, I think, pivoting, where I wanted to take the good part about this big stuff, but also make it so it had connectivity and relatability to the audience, is how can I change these props from cliche magic props to organic objects? And so the first thing, we started developing was like the blades. We had like an origami, and it was like samurai swords. We're like, how can we make these blades like cooler and just more on brand? And then I had a box where I made people disappear, and eventually that took form into a shipping container, which is now a focal point in the show, where there's a big organic object that everyone knows what it is. And it when you see it, I think you start to fill in gaps yourself, and oh yeah, I know what that is. It's heavy. You start telling yourself things about it where you don't do that with a magic sparkly box. And so the whole show started like power tools, spray paint, just organic. I mean, the smaller things, like you saw in the show, like the candy bar effect is a main thing. But the big takeaways, I mean, I do the jet engine, the helicopter, and things, but a lot of it are things that you'll find in your garage and in your life. And there are big illusions, but it isn't like props.
I want to ask about the journey in a minute, but I just want to touch on one other thing, which is that you mentioned Dave Hamner, who also has a show in Branson, which is really awesome that, you met him as one of the first people, that really got you into magic and took you backstage. And now you guys are both performing regular shows in the same city. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. I mean, he became a great friend, and our friendship has been consistent throughout the years. So now we even like cross market each other's shows. And so that's cool. But one of the things that he did for me was he taught me how to do some of these tricks one-on-one. So like when I first got my sub trunk illusion, whatever I was, like freshman in high school or something, I brought that trick to Branson, and in the parking lot, he showed me how to use it. So in my mind, I was doing it completely differently, like the positioning and the way to come up and all that. And he's like, no, like this is faster. At the time, he and the Pendragons, I think, had the fastest switch. So getting that level of expertise as a kid was really cool. So now, like a full circle thing, I do that same thing now, or after every show, I do a meet and greet, but it isn't just like an autograph signing a photo. I literally bring people backstage and answer questions and show them props. And a lot of people think it's just, interesting to know, but I know there's a few every once in a while that are very, very serious. And so I hope it's more impactful for those people.
That's awesome. So let's get back to sort of that moment in life. So you saw their shows, you got into it, you started seeking a little bit of advice. You started seeking a little bit of advice and help from them. How did you start doing this professionally? Like, it's kind of, trying to become a full-time magician is crazy sort of in general. How did you go about doing this?
Well, I knew what I wanted for a starting point, and I knew what I wanted for an end goal. The first version of the show was pretty simplistic, but I still needed some basic things to tour with the props and the crew. And so I wanted a tour bus, like a rock star tour bus. That'd be cool. Couldn't afford it. So I ended up having some side hustles to get eventually what would be an old school bus that we gutted the seats out of the back and then made it so it could put all the props in there and the people in there. We painted the outside, and that was like the 1.0 version of our like touring rig. But in order to do that, I needed some funding that I didn't have. So my side hustle at the time was I went and I convinced this company that did fundraising for band trips. They have a catalog you go around with, like selling candles and wrapping paper. I convinced them to send one to me so I could just personally go out and fundraise for my magic show. So I'd go door to door and I'd sell things to people and explain that I wanted to be a magician. They could help do that. And even now today, people will come to the show and say, I bought a candle from you, how many years ago. And I took that money and I reinvested it into a little vending business where I got went to Costco, got candy bars, and then I went to break rooms and I created these like little vending side hustle. And so anyway, I sold those businesses, a couple of businesses that I created like that. I got my first little investment, self-made investment. And so what I would do is I would go around with my friends and we'd go from town to town where I'm from, which is South Dakota. So it'd be like Iowa, Minnesota, like that area. We'd put up posters, call radio stations, treat it like much like a grassroots band would do and try to market the show. The problem was we didn't have the notoriety. There was no like as seen on a TV show. There was no viral videos that they're like, oh, I'm familiar from seeing it here. It was just new to the people that we were marketing it to. And so the turnouts were a little bit disappointing. You know, we'd really work hard and only get 50 people sometimes to come see the show. But we'd keep returning to the same areas because we found that word of mouth was a really key part of this.
You would return like once a year or like multiple times?
Once a year.
Yeah.
No, once a year. And we'd see the crowds double and triple. And it seemed like every show that we would do, there would be someone there that would be the key to the next thing. You know, maybe it was someone that has a company and brought us back in for a corporate event. So it was just like getting out there, getting exposure, like anything else, had a residual benefit to it. And so it was maybe 3 or 4 years of just doing that before we really started to see success from it.
So there's a couple of things here. The first is I just want to comment on how amazing it is that you had side hustles to help fund the magic. I mean, I think it's pretty unique as far as magic goes that, you know, magicians, you can generally start doing things like birthday parties or whatever, and then you like graduate from there. But it doesn't really seem like that's what you wanted. You wanted to do big, awesome touring shows with big illusions. And to do that, you had to fundraise and wait and invest, which is really just an awesome and really cool story to have that in front of you. The other thing that is really interesting to me about it is that you were on the road with a crew in a bus with giant objects, renting theaters. These are expensive things, you know, like one magician can go and do a tour for relatively cheaply. They can rent a 100-person comedy club, you know, and go from there. But to do grand illusions in a theater with a crew is a bit of a different scale of that. Can you talk a little bit about, like, were you losing boatloads of money for years trying to do this thing? Was it like, were you partners with these people? Like, how did this even work so that it wasn't, you know, you weren't just totally ruined and bankrupt from trying to do this thing? Like, it seems expensive.
Yeah, I mean, there was cost involved, but we try to keep those costs managed. I found a lot of success in smaller markets at that point. You know, I was in high school. So high school performing arts center was a cool venue at that point. We did like even some smaller like VFWs and some gyms and some college campuses, and found some places that would lease their venue or rent their venue out affordably, not like the big performing arts centers where it's a union house and cost. So we were able at that point to rent a venue for, you know, under $1,000 and spend, you know, a couple $1,000s to market it with the radio and all of that. And, you know, there's a couple $1,000s in transport, but it was a managed cost to where we could have a decent break-even point, achievable break-even point. But I went a lot of years without ever paying myself. Whatever profits we were able to have come to the bottom line always got reinvested into new props or new things. But it was a long goal. It wasn't anything that I was trying to make successful overnight, because I'd seen people where they would get like an investor, for example, and they would just blow through that person's money and it would be gone. Or they would have family money and they'd make a big investment. So the person had no real experience or no developed talent, just whatever raw abilities they have. And they were just given all this at once. Someone bought all this stuff for them. They didn't know what to do with it. And then it wasn't really sustainable. Whereas what I ended up doing was harder because it was a several year thing, but I learned so much at every step. And I was able to grow as a performer by doing shows repetitively. I would film the shows. I'd go back and review it. How can this be better? So because it was a gradual process, I think ultimately it made a better product.
It seems like you knew that this was going to be a multi-year thing to get this to work out, and that it wasn't like you were trying to make these cities, pop off and have a big payout or something. This was like you beginning to do it. Plus, you were in high school, right? Like that's
Yeah.
pretty early on. So that's awesome. Talk to me a little bit more about like the I guess let's talk about the timeline. So that started happening. There was corporates that were bringing you out. You're returning to these cities. Did you keep touring sort of in the cities that were near you? What was the next step after this started to work and you started to get some notoriety and things sold out and things like that?
It was then just growing the radius, going out to bigger markets and to farther markets. Eventually, we got some international deals. We did like a month run in Acapulco, and it was a great run for a lot of reasons. One was that financially, we were able to do a lot of tickets. I think we sold like 150,000 tickets over the course of this. Maybe it's 1 or 2 months, but
Whoa.
it was a lot. It was arenas, big venues, and we worked with some great promoters that made us very popular there before we came. Did some great TV appearances and had a lot of buzz surrounding it, and it did very well. And so when we came back, I was able to do some key things with the finances from that tour. One of them was to buy a new tour bus. And so it was the bus I wanted as a kid, this Prevost bus, like what all the A-list celebrities, roll in. And so now I think that caused the crew to take things more seriously. Now we're rolling in style, and it's easier to get good people. Our crew is more comfortable. It's a bus that isn't breaking down, every 5 trips and having to do this and that. So the touring became easier. Continue to reinvest in the illusions, and we started making duplicates of the illusions that we started creating and inventing. We would build one, and then we'd build a duplicate, so then that could travel overseas. So one could stay and tour in the US, then one could go overseas. And so what that did was it allowed me to ship things overseas, which takes a month or 2 months to go reliably to the other side of the world, and then through customs and all the things that have to happen. But it wasn't just taking our shows off of our calendar to clear the calendar to ship props. Now we're able to still maintain touring and do that. And so again, like that was a good business move for us too. It took a bit of a leap, but it was great. And then I found Branson at that point. So I came to Branson to work on a project with one of my idols as a kid, Brett Daniels, who I again grew up watching on TV. Yeah. And Brett had a project called Illusionist, which was an offshoot of the Illusionist that he co-created and did very well in Broadway and did Sydney and Dubai. And so it was a massive success. And they wanted to put an offshoot version of it that he wanted to create in Branson. And it was kind of a cool thing because he'd sold the show to a promoter in Branson that loved it and bought it based on artwork that he had created, where he had kind of put me at the focal point amongst my heroes as a kid, Jeff McBride, and of course, Brett and Kevin James, other people that were originally supposed to be part of this project. Later, I think a couple of the guys went other directions, but when it got sold before he even talked to me. He sold it on concept, and then once they bought it, he called me and said that I have this thing and you're a part of it. And since it had already gone all the way to getting a contract, I cleared my schedule and went to Branson for it. I played a couple of seasons, and then it was great, but then it introduced me back into this market. So Branson is the place that I would come as a kid because it was an easier destination to get to than Las Vegas from where I'm from in South Dakota. It's a 9-hour drive versus a 26-hour drive. So I was very familiar with the town, and so I got re-energized about it. After the run with the Revolutionists, I ended up putting my headliner show back in Branson, and it worked out very well to continue remain with the presence in Branson, where I could remain in one spot, and the 10 million people that come to Branson every year traveled in, as I could stay in one spot. And then around that, I would also tour and travel. So it became a really good thing for me to be able to have this like little residency that I could create and design new things and then take them on tour.
It's sort of a weird question, but can you explain to people what Branson is? You know, like I think people that are near it in America understand what it is, but people that aren't don't really get that it's its own little universe. Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful here, the lakes, and there's a lot of just cool outdoor waterfalls and scenic this and that and fishing. And Bass Pro is located here, has one of the top golf courses in the world that Johnny Morris, who owns Bass Pro, built, and all these celebrities fly in to play this golf course. And then there's also a theme park here called Silver Dollar City, which ranks at the top of theme parks in America, or maybe the world. I'm not sure, but it's high up there. You've got maybe close to 100 different shows they're playing at any given moment here. There's no gambling. That's just been a thing here somehow. Just never caught on, never happened. But there's all kinds of just entertainment and things to do, mini golf and Ferris wheels, and just you come as a family. So it's a unique place in a lot of ways because of how diverse it is. I mean, you can go see like old country shows, you can see modern shows, you can see A-list. Like Luke Bryan was here the other day and Imagine Dragons, and so you've got everything from the small guys to the biggest names, and it's all kind of right here in one like 10-mile stretch.
Yeah, you know what I understood about it is, first of all, everything you say is helpful to understand what it is. What I understood about it is it's kind of like it's for families that you drive to instead of fly to, you know, like instead of it being a crazy thing for the weekend that people fly to Vegas, people drive 4, 6, 8 hours to Branson to go to cool meals, do fun activities, go to theme parks, go see cool shows and things like that. And it was quite a unique place. Nothing like I have ever seen anywhere in the world. To have whatever it is, 10 million people that come through every year and a population of 10,000 or something, like quite a unique place to be. Talk to me about those beginning months or years in getting that theater in Branson. First of all, is it a theater that you rent, that you bought? Like, I'm not really even sure how that part works. And then I'm curious about like, you know, to market in a city like that versus going on tour to a city once, like a small town that's never heard of a magician, you know, like, hey, I'm here with crazy video versus being in one spot. It must be quite a different world in terms of marketing. How did you make it work? What were those early months like?
Yeah, Branson is a very tough town to establish in. They say that it takes at least 3 years to achieve any level of
Wow.
success. And one of the difficult things that no one talks about here is a lot of the tickets move through ticket brokers. And just because there's a lot of turnover in the shows here, it's very hard to succeed as a performer in Branson. The ticket sellers don't want to sell tickets until you've been here long enough that they've gained confidence that you're going to be here between when they sell a ticket and when the person comes to the show. So it does take, but it's also one of those things where if they need to wait 3 years to prove yourself, how can you become successful without the people who sell your tickets in the first place? It becomes this cycle of impossibility. So now I have my own theater here in Branson, but this is my first year with that. Previous to that, I would just like lease theaters or lease spots in theaters. And I think I played in 3 or 4 different theaters throughout the years here until I found the one that I ultimately thought this needs to be my home. And it's a 1,000-seat theater, which is like the right number of seats. Some of them are overbuilt, you know, like 3,000 seats, or that's too many seats in my opinion for a show like mine in a market like this. But those are the stages that have the capability of doing my show. They're big stages and big houses, but I don't want too many empty seats.
Yeah.
The smaller ones have the opposite problem. Like there's no space, but it has the right number of seats. So the one that I found ended up being a really good fit. But it took a lot of patience and perseverance to get over that hump and make people realize that I was serious about being here for a long period of time.
Talk to me about what it's like doing. How many shows do you do a week? 6, 8?
Depending on the season, right now we're doing 5 shows a week because it's the slow season here. And then during the busy season, we have been doing 7 days a week. And this last year we did 7 days a week for a 3-month stretch. And then Branson goes through some lulls where less tourists or older tourists are here. And during that time, we go out and tour and we just do, several weeks on the road. And there's also times where it's great here on the weekends, but not the weekdays or vice versa. And so we'll kind of go in and out of Branson during those times. Over the course of a year, we'll probably do about 250 to 270 shows in Branson, and then maybe 60 to 70 on tour.
So those are some crazy numbers of quantity of shows. I mean, it's on par with the people in Vegas that do shows of, that quantity. It's basically as many shows as a human person can do in a year. There's not much more spare dates. Is it sort of a weird question? I just asked this to Mike Hammer, who does this show in Vegas. Like, you still love it? You still love showing up to work? Does it feel a little more like a job than it does the dream that you thought you would have? Like, what does it feel like on the day to day, saying the same lines and doing the same actions?
I mean, I built a lot of audience participation in the show just because it mixes it up, and it makes it so I have to think on my feet and not get complacent and robotic. But the way we have it dialed in now, yeah, I work most every day, but I'm only working 2 hours. I'm able to go in right at showtime, do the show, I do the meet and greet, and then head back home. And I live 8 miles or so from the theater, so it's nothing just to drive in, do the show. And I live on the lake here, so I'm able to be in a different environment. Once I'm done with my day at the theater, I can go out and it's peaceful, here, and kind of get that serenity as well to allow me to recharge my batteries and do it again. What I think people don't realize about performers when you're just sitting in the seats is the amount of the expectation that you're putting on that person, that for a moment, I think you forget that person is human because you've chosen to buy a ticket and see the performer on that particular day, and you're ready to see their best work ever. You're not expecting to see anything less than their best. But that is a human being that might be struggling with, life in general. Something could have happened that's very traumatic in their life that day. And as an audience member, I think it's very easy to be quick to review the show or say, go online, oh, he wasn't into it, or he's going through the motions and that type of thing. And so you always have to be at your best. So that demand begins to wear on you when you do shows every single day, because it's almost like you don't have the ability to be human. When you hit that stage, you've got to take whatever struggles you're dealing with, and you have to completely separate from that. So it's good and bad. It's healthy because it's a break from our own problems as entertainers that we're having in our personal lives, if there are that, but also that disassociation and in and out and getting that high of being on stage and that rush of gratification, the audience and all of that. And then to go from that to a lot of entertainers, I think are very closed off in their personal lives. And you look at, I won't name names, but people that we all grew up, watching or thinking these are the most elite performers in the field. And you get to know them and you're like, wow, on a personal level, they're nothing like what I thought they were. They're very introverted and all that. So managing all of that can become, I think, difficult and at times possibly unhealthy. So I'm at the point now where I'm just trying to find that balance.
And just to sort of, first of all, that context and that info is really helpful. Just to sort of like reiterate the question, and I guess I'll say it another way, which is, in Toronto, Ben and I thought about like getting a venue and doing shows in a venue. And when we compare what that looks like for us compared to like doing awesome corporate gigs and doing 80 corporate gigs a year versus 300, shows a year in the same theater of the same thing, like there's a certain amount of like freedom and joy and whatever that comes with being in different places and doing things like that or whatever. And I know you also tour, but does it become quite a bit rote, doing the show in the theater? Do you I'm sure it becomes a little bit easier to fall into just saying the lines and forgetting that you're present doing the show when you're doing that many of them, or Is there anything that you do or that you feel to help it really feel fresh for you each night?
Well, again, I think that's where I built all the audience participation into the residency show, because literally no two shows are the same. A bit might be 2 minutes one night and then 10 minutes the next night based on the audience members. So that's what really keeps it, fresh for me every night in doing that. The road is a whole different animal. I do more of the audience participation stuff in Branson for that reason. But when you're on tour, you're constantly adapting to new places, new situations, and all that. So I think it's almost impossible to get robotic in those environments. What's challenging is to go from a lot of one and then go into the other world. When we're in and out, we're constantly adapting. But when you're used to walking 5 steps from a prop and being at the very front of the stage every single night, and all of a sudden you're in a different venue, it's 3 steps, that can really throw you off. Or even just things as simple as, in the residency, the lighting might be able to shed enough light on the audience that I can see the audience and see them reacting to things. And in the next venue, there might not be audience light, and I'm saying the lines that I think are funny, and I can't tell if the audience is giving me the response that I want. And you start to get, in your own head. So I think those things are always interesting.
Do you find that one gives you a break from the other? Like, are you looking forward to touring while you're in Branson, looking forward to Branson while you're touring, or is one of them really the light and joy and the other one is the work, or something different?
No, I think because we bounce in and out of both worlds, it's always like we're looking forward to going back to the other thing, which is kind of cool.
Cool. One thing that jumped out to me at the show was afterwards, we met up, we hung out a bit, and then the team was like, "Hey, Reza, we need you downstairs. We're working on our new illusion." And it was like midnight or something. And I was like, okay, I'm going home. I'm sure you guys worked on it for another 30 minutes or hour or something like that. How often are you adding new illusions and new things into the show?
It's my goal to have something ready to go every 2 months, have one new illusion ready to go into the show. Sometimes that flows and sometimes it doesn't. The biggest challenge for me, aside from creating the new illusions, is what to take out. Which of these things you've invested so much into to go back on the shelf. So that becomes difficult. But the creative process, is one that's very challenging, but also equally rewarding. The night that you were there, I think we were getting ready to debut an illusion for the meet and greet. So what we do before it goes in the show is we take the backstage meet and greet and we route them back into the seats after the meet and greet experience, and then allow them to be the first people to watch the illusion. So it does a couple of things. It gives us a real audience to perform in front of, and then it also gives us a focus group to ask questions to and gain feedback and responses to allow us to refine the illusion before it goes into the show. So that's something that we found to be very.
I mean, it's a great system of using what you have to test things and add new things into the show. It's really awesome. Let's talk about grand illusions for a minute. I think that in the world of magic, like tricks, parlor style, close up, there is Vanishing Ink and there's Penguin and there's all these retailers of where to get magic tricks. I think for illusions, there are way less illusions. There are few illusion builders. The list of things of when you want to do a grand illusion of where to go seems like it's smaller. Not to give away your secrets, but like, where do you go to find new illusions? Are you coming up with them? Are you contacting the same 3 guys and going, "Hey, what do you have that's new?" Or is there a place you get inspiration? How do you find new grand illusions?
So we do most of our own fabricating. We've got a warehouse facility here. Some things will take, like if it's something that has been designed by another builder, we'll work with that builder in building something that they've already created, but do it in a unique way. So it's got some sort of a spin on it. Or we'll just take it how they built it and then bring it into our facility and figure out how to make it different or unique. But for the most things that we're creating right now, which is the majority of the projects that we're doing, it's all in-house. So it's my initial concept kind of sketched out. I've got someone that builds a 3D model that we can work with first. And then I've got a lead fabricator and then a team as well that works with them, and they build literally in the warehouse. So as we're building things, we can go back and if it involves like a person contained within something, We can do measurements as it's being fabricated, and also check, make sure, okay, does this work in real life like we think it will. We also do, all the editing, the video wall content, and all the editing done in the editing bay we have here as well. So it's kind of like everything is under the umbrella that we've created here to be able to take a concept from sketching on a napkin all the way through to being ready to push on a stage.
So there's not like famous magic illusion builders that are building most of your stuff. It's your people that are building most of the things. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my creations for sure. It's all our own people, because we are isolated. The builders that build the majority of performers are in Vegas or in LA or in that area, and it's a 2-day trip, and so we're not able to be a part of that process like we are when it's in-house here.
Talk to me a bit more about team. How many people are on your team right now?
So I have 8 core people that are always with me no matter where I am. And then if it's a tour date, there's an additional 8 people that are local, and they just get trained up day of show to do small jobs that allow us to present the show. But I've had the same driver for the last 11 years. He's been with me all the time. The same tour manager for the last 6 years. Dancers, the front of house tech, lighting, sound, and 1 or 2 other people, and that makes up my core crew.
I think one thing that I realized when I saw you working with the team is that, it's not just a magician. You become the conductor of, a small army, like you become a CEO of Reza Inc. or, whatever it's called. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, a lot of us, like I have a team, but I've got someone who answers emails and somebody who makes graphics and myself, my business partner. And it's not quite the same as like people who have to learn choreography and have to get this set up and have to get that set up and all that. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like of managing a team, 365?
Yeah, we all just have to find our cadence of working separately, but also working together and having all that be cohesive as we bring these projects to life. So we all sit around our conference table once a week and kind of unload our minds and figure out goals and structures. And then I've got department heads over every department. So I've got one lead girl that is over the top of the other girls and managing projects there. It's costuming or choreography or whatever's happening that particular week. And I have a backstage guy that's over maintenance of props or development or anything in that world backstage. And then I've got a front of house lead that takes care of making sure everything is inventoried and we've got things going on the road, things need to be replaced to maintain redundancy for tech or whatever we're doing. So having those different department heads allows me to kind of be more of the creative visionary than the day-to-day. And I found that to work best for me and for my style.
Where or how did you learn to do this? Or just by going through it brute force and learning to, add one person at a time and manage a team?
I mean, there's a couple of things I learned right away that were hard lessons, but important ones. One is that you're only as good as your weakest link, which we all know. But in the sense of a team, one person who isn't happy or isn't doing their job at their highest capacity, that becomes cancerous. And it becomes very difficult for other people to work alongside that one person that isn't happy. And eventually, if you don't cut that one person out, your whole crew is going to become as complacent or whatever that person's downfall is. So that became very important. And then I found that having people who are passionate about the product is also key. Originally I would go cast my crew at places like Full Sail University, where they multi-year tech program, and graduates of that program are ready to go out and use their abilities on tour and residencies or wherever, lighting, sound, technology. So they're equipped with the knowledge to take on the expectation of our show. What they don't have is the passion. Instead of that, I started asking people who would just come to the show, and in a meet and greet setting, they would say, I love the show. Maybe they would speak on how it has affected them or inspired them, gone through a hard time, and then also ask if there's any job opportunities available. Now that person who's passionate about the show, they can now be taught this skill set that they might need to to be aware of in order to be a part of the team. But they last a lot longer
Right.
because they're there for the right reasons. Now, of course, the ideal situation, they come with passion and they have some sort of training. Those people are rare. When we come across them, it's exciting for us. But I like people who love what they do.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's really helpful, and it's interesting that you've been through this enough that you can see like what types of people work and what types of people don't, and that you can build a team and have a team that lasts so long is a great testament to you really being able to do this. When I started this, and even when the show wrapped up, I was telling you, I mean, everybody, all the magicians I know, that I've like literally never seen so many illusions in one show. And I see a lot of magic shows. Is there somebody or people that are your inspiration, or that you're trying to model what you do after, or that you're trying to I even told you like The Illusionist, which is a great show, Champions of Magic, which is a great show, like you still have more illusions than that than them in your show. Now, you're not a touring. I'm assuming you still have illusions in touring, maybe not as many if it's a touring show. Maybe you do. But is there anybody that you are modeling or that you're trying to be like, even if it's not exactly, but there was inspiration that got you to where you are here?
Man, I don't know who that would be as like one individual, but there's different things that I admire about different performers out there. Like the way that Copperfield was able to make magic emotional was so cool, over the years, seeing what he's done with that. If you go down like the Vegas guys, Chris has got a spectacular production.
Yeah.
And, that's cool. Some of the smaller comedy guys, like you mentioned, Mike Hammer, the way that they're able to work the room, and Matt Franco, just so likable and relatable.
Yeah.
So I know I'm just kind of like working my way down the strip and just taking different things from different performers and saying, if you put all those things together, you'd have the most incredible show in the world. I don't know that I ever set out to have the biggest show. I mean, as a kid, yeah, like I wanted that. But like in recent years, I think it's just a byproduct. I'm not trying to cram all the biggest illusions on the stage, but I'm just trying to figure out people tap into. And of course, there's something really cool about the big things. And so that's why they have their place. And probably the most value is in the marketing. When you see a reel or a billboard, seeing all these big things draws you into that show. So it sells tickets and it has a place. But when you leave the show, I think the moments, at least for me, that you're talking the most about are the smallest moments. Those are the ones that stick with you. Do you feel that's true in the show that you saw?
I mean, it's hard because I do feel that that's true, but I also like small, like I'm obsessed with card tricks. So obviously the card trick is the thing that I'm like talking about, and like I do close-up magic. So like that's the stuff I'm talking about. So I don't know if you feel that that's how other people talk about it too, but like for me, yes, it is. But certainly the illusions like levitating and things appearing and whatever, like they're the most incredible in the literal sense of the word incredible. But like the ones that I talk about, the ones that I remember are like the Oreo and like, the things that are just happen that are a little bit smaller, just because that's the lane that I'm in. I don't know if you find the lay people are the same, but certainly it's because that's the lane that I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned the Oreo, an Oreo costs what, less than $1.
Yeah.
The trip before after that might have cost $100,000, depending on who was there that night. So there's a big gap in the value of what that object is. But again, coming back to the first thing we talked about, it's all just furniture. It's what you do with it. The Oreo trick, the original idea there was the concept by Bizarro.
Yeah.
That to bring the filling back in an Oreo. That's where the inspiration for that trick came from. And as I performed that over the years, I wanted to make that an original piece. And so you saw what I did with that, being able to visually grow it, do some things that hadn't been done before with that concept. But then the big kicker is to be able to feed someone that Oreo. It hasn't left your sight. You've seen all the magic. You've seen these impossible things. But now someone from the audience is eating that Oreo. And then, of course, there's that like joke kicker at the end, which brings it all together. I'm not, I won't go into too much detail about all that, other than, to say that became what people talk about over the big things. However, I don't think that it would work to just do a whole show of card tricks and Oreos. I mean, I shouldn't say it doesn't work. There's people that do that sort of thing, and it works very well for them. But for me, if I adjusted all the big things, I don't feel that would be as strong for me. If I did all the small things, I don't think it'd be very strong for me. That back and forth. So you asked like where the inspiration comes from, and I mentioned some names, some things that I admire. But I think where I look most for inspiration is in the concert world, because you have those big elaborate moments in production. There might be something pyro, all the toys flashing on that stage, and you feel that person's energy and that person's music. But then there might be a moment after that where they're just on the front of the stage with a stool and a microphone and just talking about why this song has meaning to them, and you're feeling that's relatable. And right now they're just in the spotlight. There's no dancers, maybe not even a band, but now you're connecting with that performer and you're feeling what they felt when they're writing that song. And now you feel that. The next thing might be big or small, but it's like this roller coaster of these hills and valleys. And I think that's so cool to bring that concept into a magic show.
I think what you're saying is really awesome. And I think it lands incredibly well, at least with me, that, in my eyes, when I was talking about it, like it was so many illusions, such a great illusion show, but like there was a variety of things in it, and that's what made each and everything sort of speak in its own right. And it's hard to not have three different versions of cutting a woman in half all blend into themselves in a show, that's full of illusion. So they have to be different, and they have to be different styles, and you have to have different effects happening, and also for those things to stand out, there needs to be things that are slow or smaller or more intimate. At the beginning when you were talking about touring, getting a tour bus, you were talking about musicians and bands, and you talked about it again now. Are there bands who you've loved and still love to this day that maybe are part of your inspiration in terms of what you do?
Yeah, I think like at the top of that list would be a band called Switchfoot. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were one of the first bands to recognize me and give me a platform and put me on their podcast back in the day. And I found them to be really good guys on and off stage, and their music resonates. I've used several of their pieces in my show, and just really cool guys. So there was a moment where through those relationships that we built that I was able to also get on some other stages and be an opening act for like Steve Aoki and Trace Adkins, that Brown band, of performance like that. And so it was kind of cool to be able to bring magic onto these music stages and for the other audiences. Played like Huey Lewis in the News, played a big show with him one time. And so it's just making magic more diverse. I think it's been a cool opportunity as well.
Love it. I think it's really helpful. And I figured there was a tie into music for you, given the way that you were talking about some of these bands and their touring. So I love the shout out to Switchfoot. I want to know about how this stuff gets better. And what I mean by that is I think that when I think about Vegas and I think about these big shows, like some of these magicians have either magic consultants on staff or magic consultants they've hired for a while. Who helps you with your show? Are there other voices and people that help you make magic stronger, that are there sort of whispering in your ear or looking at stuff? Or is it mostly just you and the team that you've cultivated?
A lot of it is the team that I've cultivated, but I also have two other kind of sectors of people. One are people in the industry, friends that fly in from time to time, and they work with a diverse group of other entertainers. And so when they come in, they have a different perspective than what I have, which is kind of cool. But then I also have just lay people as well that I've just formed friendships with over the years, people that come to the show often. And I value their input as much or more. Because when we're designing these things, oftentimes we're designing them based on our own preferences. But what it has to do is connect with an audience. Magicians have a different way of thinking, which sometimes you hear the phrase like run without being chased, like those types of things. So I like to hear just what people that have no knowledge of magic have to say. In fact, today I was having lunch with some friends and they're not in the industry at all. And I used the opportunity to say, don't worry about how a trick works. I don't, that part's not important at the moment. Just give me the craziest ideas for something that you would just be blown away to see. And what they gave me for ideas was probably more valuable than if I had a focus group of magicians that are used to thinking just within the context of this, glass box.
So how did, like, for example, the card trick that you did or the Oreo thing that you did, are those your inventions? Are those magicians sharing ideas with you? Is those you consulting with lay people? Like they're pretty magic inventions. It's not like a layperson's like, hey, you could do this. Like those, for example, they just come from your ideas or people that you were jamming with. Where did those come from?
Yeah, originally the Oreo thing, bizarro, but then I made it into my own original piece that was miles away from where it started. The card trick, I think the root concept there is any card at any number. But I've just seen that trick in so many different ways, and it all kind of just seems like the same trick, even though there's different methods at play or different pattern. It's just kind of just feels redundant. And so I was like, how can we approach this from a different angle? And it became, I don't know if I want to say too much about it, but a true magician fooler, right? Did you feel
for
cool
sure
by that?
For sure.
And not just once, but maybe multiple times in that same trick.
Yeah.
So if you think back to it, do you even see that as any card, any number?
The first half was an any card, any number, and then the second half was not.
Yeah. I mean, so the first half, I think it's by surprise. Like, you don't see it coming.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
It's like a byproduct of a prediction. But then you're using that moment as a convincer of what the cards are. And I mean, we'll just say it. So here's the kicker of it for people who are like trying to like, what are you even talking about? So after the version of any card, any number, I hand the card to a person, and there's two more cards that are selected prior to this that are still in play but haven't been revealed yet. And I just start to kind of waterfall the cards to the table, and I allow that person to throw their card face up anywhere they want to inside the shuffled deck that you just saw, all mixed up. And you visibly see the card from their hands go into the pack. It never leaves your sight, and wherever it lands, it is now directly in between the other two cards that were thought of. So by concept, that seems like that would be a pretty impossible trick. But we had to figure out a way to still make it entertaining by creating the routining. And it starts on stage, it works in the audience. Now I'm in the audience with them. And so it's kind of like following this ball throughout this whole thing. And as all this is happening, magical things are taking place versus just here, pick a card and here it is. I wanted to make this feel like a bit of a journey.
Was that your invention? Was that you and a couple of magicians late night at a bar? Like, where does something like that come from, which is pretty robust?
So that one all fell out of my head. I didn't even, I don't think, consult with one other magician on that. But it took me the better part of a year to land where it landed. But yeah, that one, it was all my idea, but I did at a couple different points, test it out on magicians in its early stages, and it fooled them. And so that's where I knew, okay, I'm on the right track with it here.
Some of these things are quite robust. I mean, like I can think to some of the illusions and some of the predictions and different things like that in the show. So far, the two that I mentioned are your creations. Is it just you each? Like, I know you said that you've got friends that come to town and you've got lay people, but like, is it mostly just you each night going, hey, I wonder if this could be sharper, or hey, I wonder what this could be? Is there something else that I'm missing that makes this show tick and helps it improve, like whatever it is, 1% each show or each week or whatever? Like, is there anything other than you and the crew just looking at it and sharpening the saw that makes it?
No, other than like when I meet people like you notice I didn't miss the opportunity to pick your brain.
Yeah.
And invite criticism. Because normally people aren't going to tell you bad things. They're going to tell you good things. No matter what they thought, they're only going to tell you good things. And so I like to kind of disarm people and ask them for the criticism. And I did that with you. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me your notes. So that's where I learn a lot.
You know what? I think the thing that stood out to me the most from watching the entire show was how hardworking you, I don't want to just say are, but still are, like this many hundreds or thousands or whatever shows into being in Branson and into the process and whatever, like you're still staying up late to work on new magic. You're still getting notes. You're still sharpening the show. Even the fact that you didn't do an invisible deck, but you did do a unique any card any number trick of your own creation is like, you could have done, you could have easily filled it with a card trick with an invisible deck slot or, something else slot. But a lot of these things you're really choosing to go the extra mile. And I think it really makes a big difference. Can you speak to this like extra mile kind of thing here? Like, I'm sure you've seen a lot of magicians where their shows are good enough, or the magic is like, will do. I think you're trying to exceed that. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that just comes from just my personality type. It's always like there's room for improvement. How can this be better? It's kind of a curse, and that I feel like I'm never satisfied, never just content and go, okay, we did it, and now that it's done, it's a constant evolution. But yeah, I'm just never ready to just say that's good enough, I guess. And that's where it comes from. And just trying to understand the weakness of performers in general. I've seen a lot of performers or magicians develop egos about things where they think that's good enough, because at the end of the show, the audience stood up and they clapped for you. Well, what happened? Did the whole audience stand up and clap for you? No. 4 or 5 people really loved the show and they stood up, and it triggered the rest of the people to stand up. Not everyone who was standing up and clapping loved the show as much as the 5 people. After the show, most of the people left, but some of the people came to talk to you afterwards. They're the ones saying, that was amazing, that was incredible, like I loved it, that was so cool. But you're not hearing from the people who just walked out. You're just hearing from the cream of the crop, the best people. And some of those things I think kind of get in your head. You're like, okay, I created it, it's great. Standing ovation, people love the show. I'm most interested in the people who walked out right away, or the last people to stand up. Why is that? And how could they stand up first? How could they stay to be, so it's kind of like, I don't want to label myself as a pessimist, even though it sounds like maybe I'm doing that, like the glass is half empty, but I just love making things better. I love refining things. And that's probably where some of that comes from.
Well, it really shows. It's an amazing production, and, seeing behind the scenes of how many bits and parts there are, from Grand Illusion to team to filling the seats to promotion to tech to, everything, just shows like how many aspects there are that have those little tiny improvements that you can spot. And I just thought the whole thing was fabulous. So big congrats to you for everything that you've put together. Before we get to the final wrap-up questions, my last question is, however many years ago when you were in high school that you started doing these touring shows, and they were small and slowly growing, and now it's a Grand Illusion show that has a team and has illusions that are traveling around the world without you, and storage and a theater and all this stuff. And a lot of that potentially for a young magician, or even a not young magician, feels like they're out of reach. Like, these things feel like you need a lot of capital and storage and this and a team and a theater and all these different things to do stuff of that magnitude. I hear a lot from magicians who travel with a briefcase, and travel with stuff like that. And yours is different. What kind of advice do you have for a young or aspiring magician who wants to get into the big stuff, who wants to have Grand Illusions, who wants to have a team, who wants to have some of these big things? How do they pull that sort of thing off in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't even know if I would do it all over again the same way. I think if I was to do it, I would not want all the big stuff. I would personally, and I don't know if this is advice for others or just me reflecting on my own career. You can make small things play big. You can travel with, one big video wall and a camera, and now you're doing close-up miracles, but they're as big as the biggest props in the show. So, I mean, my advice might be just find ways to, I hate to say it, but pack small, play big. There's ways to do that. But if you truly have the goal of having a touring show, my strongest piece of advice, before you do it, go intern. Go go join a show that's already doing that and experience it. It's not an easy process to build it. And by the time you do build it, you might find out that it's not for you. But if you go and you spend 6 months being a part of that that's already been developed, that's invaluable. That will tell you everything you need to know. Not only will you learn so much by doing that, but you also learn if that's what you want to do.
It's so helpful. And I think that your thoughts about that maybe it's not what you want to do is like, the stuff that really resonates with me. And I think that illusion shows of the type that we are referring to are fewer and fewer in between now, because I think a lot of people know that they can have a screen and close-up magic, or things of that nature, that they pack small and that they play big. So even though you may be right that less and less people will do it, or that maybe you don't need it or whatever, I am certainly grateful that there's people like you that are doing them. Even I went to see shows in Vegas and they were great and great entertainers. But I was like, a little bummed out that I went to Las Vegas to see a magic show and there was two illusions, or something in the show. So it's really nice to be able to still see those things in shows, executed really, really well. As we sort of enter the end of the podcast, there's a couple of wrap-up questions. The first is about modern magic. What's one thing you like about what's going on in the world of magic right now, and one thing that you don't like?
I mean, what I don't like is when there's a very strong piece of magic that then gets run over by technology, and now, or becomes, even if it isn't the method that we're using, people disregard magic because of the advancement of technology.
Do you have an example?
I mean, the trick I used to use is like inject, like think of a song and here it's on my phone. But now, I mean, the abilities of apps in general is just so far advanced that I think that magic just kind of gets put into that was cool, but it's just something just an app in the phone. Mind reading would be another example. There's so many ways to get and convey information. Like I had this trick in the show for a long time. It was a spray paint prediction, where I remember prediction was made in spray paint. Not only the prediction match, but color they used matched, like I created earlier. The method that I had nothing to do with technology. There was nothing on me. There's nothing on the paint. There's nothing on technology. But technology began existing that would allow that to be very, very simple to do with something that everybody knows about. And so I had to throw that whole trick away because of that. So that, I think that's going to be a thing that's not going to get any easier. AI, I'll give you one last example. I created a trick as a kid where I filmed myself every day for a year, making a prediction about the future. And so it would be on a DVD. I'd play it, and it would be me saying, 1 year in the future on this day, the next time this video is played, I'm going to meet this person, this will be selected, this will be their favorite thing, this is their middle name. I go through it all. What was cool about it is I didn't say 1 year from now, even though that was the trick that I was creating. I said the next time this is played, which allowed me to do that for multiple years. And there became a time where I had aged visibly, 5 or 10 years into the future. And then I was able to on stage say, I made this prediction 10 years ago. And there I am on the screen, visibly 10 years younger, making a prediction about 10 years in the future on that day. Like who would have the foresight to think about making a prediction 10 years from now? So it became this incredible concept. Well, that got completely destroyed by AI, because now you can download an app, you take a picture of you as a kid, move the lips, and now it says that miracle is no longer a miracle. So there's one part of your question. What do I hate? What do I love about magic today? I guess the same is true, and the opposite is true. There are things that are just absolute miracles that I couldn't fathom, but technology exists to be able to do these things. But it's just temporary, because the more people know or more integrated into our everyday lives, the harder it is to impress people and fool people.
Love it. I think it's cool that both of those things are forefront of technology type things. And you're the first person in like 50 that their negative wasn't exposure on TikTok. So that's nice. The last thing is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be a good fit for the show. There are two catches. The first catch is that I have not interviewed him already, and the second catch is that you must be able to put us in contact. Who's one person that you think would be a really good fit for this kind of conversation?
Ooh, I'm blindsided by that. I don't have a chance to think about it. It's just me on the spot.
Yeah, but I'll give you a layup and tell you that I haven't interviewed any of the magicians in Branson. So that's a layup if there's someone there who you think I really should speak to.
Well, in my theater, I have 7 other shows that play throughout the year while I'm gone. So like on certain days, we actually have 5 shows a day. So I've got some other performers that are incredible. The winner of America's Got Talent, season 16, is doing his show at my theater. His name is Dustin Tavella. And if you haven't interviewed him, he has a very interesting on magic. It's the magic is a byproduct of what he does. The storytelling is at the forefront, the motivational aspect, the faith building aspect, and then magic is also happening. But what he's done with weaving these stories and words and inspirational moments throughout his life together to create this art is incredible. So I'd love to connect you guys.
Yeah, that would be great. His show was fantastic, and I've already, begun in talks with him to record one of these. So that's a fabulous one. Thank you. I appreciate it. Reza, any final words, comments, or thoughts for magicians around the world about, all the things that you're up to there in Branson?
Well, I opened the door for this earlier, and let me just extend an invitation that if you ever want to intern, learn more about magic, to find a show. And so let me make that an open invitation. If anyone's listening to this and feels that it could be beneficial, to gain some real world experience, I would love to connect. So, reach out to me on whatever social media, Reza Illusionist, Reza Illusionist, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And drop me a line if I can be of help to anyone who is either starting out in magic or at a place where they want to expand or collaborate.
Wow. What an amazing offer that somebody will take you up on. I know that for sure. Reza, thank you so much. Thanks for putting on such a great show. Thanks for doing this interview with me and sharing what you know. And a big thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening and being here. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you all next Thursday. Ciao, my friends. Well, there you have it. I hope you learned something, and I hope, of course, that you enjoyed it. Number one, if you liked it, if you learned something, please tell a friend. Podcasts are funny. You don't see them on YouTube. You don't see them in different places. People only know about them if someone told you about them. So tell someone about it, and that way they get to enjoy this too. Number two, if you want some help growing your business, especially this time of year, getting close to the holidays, you can send me an email, magic@torontomagiccompany.com, and I've got some goodies for you. Thanks so much, and have an amazing week. Bye.